So I'm going to go over a few things, but this is interactive, so please feel free to put in the chat questions or unmute and ask. This is all for you guys, so we can ask questions along the way. I'm going to share my screen. There we go. Okay, so we're going to talk about how to be an awesome podcast guest. And that comes in, different areas. So I'm going to talk a little bit about why podcast guesting is important. We're going to talk about finding podcasts, how to prepare, and then we'll also talk a little bit at the end about what to do with your episode once it's out. So, most of you know me, but I always like to start off with who I am. So, I am Dr. Julie Marty-Pearson. I spent 20 years in higher education before COVID hit, and I decided to start my own coaching business, which eventually led me to podcasting, and now podcasting is my business. So, I'm all about getting more women in podcasting as hosts and guests, and women sharing their story because other women need to hear it. I have 3 podcasts. The Story of My Pet is where I started. It's about 4.5 years old now. It's my passion project. I do it when I have time, but it is a top 5% podcast, and it is really focused on helping to advocate and educate. My main podcast is Podcast Your Story, where I share my journey, my tips, and I also interview other women podcasters about their journey in podcasting and what they have learned. My newest podcast, Still Becoming. I put out a few episodes and then kind of let it pause just for life, but I will be bringing that back very soon. And that one really is more topical of things of interest to women being discussed by women. And I do interviews, I do panels. I'm going to be doing some live stream. So trying a few new things there. And then, of course, several of you are members. I have my Podcast Your Story community membership, and that is where I give ongoing support for hosts and guests with various activities each month. All right. So let's jump into why should you be a podcast guest? I think most of you know this. That's why you're here, right? Is you should be, but I always like to start with this because it starts getting you thinking about like really why you're doing this or why you want to be. So let's start with the number one reason. You, as a guest, are reaching highly engaged targeted audiences. What does that mean? Podcast listeners, well, as it says, aren't fleeting scrollers, right? When you go on a podcast that's been around months, years, they have an audience that listens every episode, that comes back again and again, right? And they know what they're going to get. They know what the podcast is about, what the kind of topics. So when you come on as a guest, you're not searching for listeners. The listeners already exist. They've been created for you. And it's targeted based on what the podcast is about, who the podcast is for. And so it really does show a different kind of content than you're going to get on social media with clips and reels and all of that. So, and research does show about 80% of people, if you're listening to a podcast, you're going to listen to most or all of the episode. So not only are you getting an engaged targeted audience, but the audience sticks around. They're not going to listen for 5 minutes and dip out, right? They're there because they're there to really listen. And when people are listeners, they continue to listen, and they listen to the full episodes, which that can be anywhere from 20 minutes to an hour. So that's how much time you are getting with them in their ears or eyes, depending on how they're listening or watching. And remember, there's varying models. I've heard anywhere from 7 to like 15 hours, but people have to consume hours of you before they're ready to buy. And so think of how many 2 or 3 minute videos on Instagram that would take versus a 30-minute episode on a podcast. So it's also about bigger pieces of content. It's also great for building authority and credibility, because you are walking in with a level of trust, right? If you have podcasts you listen to regularly, you trust the host, right? There's a reason you continue to listen. They have an authority, they have a credibility as a host, as a content creator, as whatever they do with their business. And when the hosts invite you in to share your expertise, the audience automatically associates their trust with the host with you. So you're building credibility and authority just by being a guest. And then you get to add on to that by showing what you do, what you're an expert at, how you've helped people, why you've started a business, whatever it is you're going to be talking about. So that is huge, because we all know as an online business owner, building credibility is hard in a sea of coaches and mentors and, all the buzzwords, right? So again, when someone listens to a podcast regularly, they have trust with that host, and you get to borrow that trust as a guest. Evergreen content. We all need that. So the great thing about podcasting is your episode lives as long as that podcast is up and running. And unlike Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, where, you post, it hits the algorithm or doesn't, and then it kind of is gone, right? People aren't discovering your old posts a lot on social. Whereas a podcast, people listen to old episodes all the time, because sometimes they're searching for a specific topic, and that episode could have been a month ago or 6 months ago. And I can say this for sure. My pet podcast, as I said, has been going for 4.5 years. I have taken mini breaks where I've taken months, even like 6 months off from putting out new episodes, and every week people are still listening. People are listening to the most recent. People are listening to a year ago, 2 years ago. Sometimes it's crazy. I'll see them like, they're listening to an episode from like the first year, but it's because it's the content or the person's name that they've searched, and that's where they found it. So just think about, you could do an interview today that comes out next week or even next month. It could live on into 2027, 2028. And so that is huge. But it also gives you content that you can reshare over and over again, right? You don't want to just share it once. You want to share it multiple times. You want, on a week, you don't have a lot of content. You're like, oh, I don't feel like making new stuff. Go grab an old guest episode and talk about it again. It doesn't matter if you talked about it before, because how many people actually saw your post or your email, right? So it can be evergreen from discoverability, but also from your vantage point of having this content to use down the line. And this is also what's very important when you're guesting, to be evergreen. Don't talk about dates. Don't share links that could expire or only for the next 2 months, because this is evergreen content. People could find this episode a year from now. You want to be sharing something that they can always still find, a link that's always going to be updated. And, so be really thoughtful about that when you're being interviewed or you're sharing your links. Think about what are the best ones for long-term discoverability. Another thing is that podcast guesting can open the door to other opportunities. I have had hosts I've been on introduce me to other hosts to be on their podcast. We click and we decide, let's do a collaboration together, or let's do episode swaps. You can be on my podcast, I can be on yours. There's so many different ways that you can build new opportunities by guesting, that you can actually, you want to connect with the host and get to know them. You want them to think of your name if someone asks for a certain type of guest. So being a good guest isn't just about the interview itself, but it's about building those relationships with the people that you're talking to, with their team, whoever you're interacting with. And we already talked about this, but in addition to it being evergreen, this is also really good for boosting your visibility, having your name out there, having Google see your name in more places. Again, we wanted to be discoverable, yes, by Google, although Google has changed. Really, now it's the game of being discoverable by AI, which is similar but different. It's all about the SEO, your name, what you do, and being out there in the online space again and again. So when people search you, they're more likely to find you. And of course, we're not just talking about a post on social media. This is your name, your content showing up on Apple, Spotify, iHeart, YouTube, wherever they put their episode. Okay, so let's jump in. Any questions before I keep going? Saw a couple people come in. Okay, so how to find podcasts. And this is probably one of the biggest questions I get asked. How do we find podcasts? So this is something I always like to start with because I think it's very important. And it isn't about more podcasts. It's about finding the right podcast, the right audience, the right place for your message, the right alignment. Because you do want quality over quantity. Now, there are plenty of people that they're just doing quantity. Like, how many podcasts can I get on in a month or in a year? And, if that's the way you want to do it, that's great. Obviously, you're going to get visibility from that, right? But we all have 10 different things we could be doing on a given day as a business owner. We want to use our time well, and we want to be strategic. So let's say we have enough time to do 1 or 2 podcast guesting a month, right? Still in a year, that's, 10 to 20 different episodes, which is great. But we don't have time to be filling out 6 or 8 or 10 applications, right? So what we want to do in finding it is finding the right ones for us. So a lot of that has to do with what you do, what you want to be promoting, and what topics you can speak to. For me, I have a range. Obviously, I can talk about launching a podcast, growing a podcast, guesting. I also do things around storytelling. I talk about building community. So I have a wider range I can do. So that means those are varying podcasts depending on what I'm looking at. But one of the ways I think about that is, who is your ideal listener? Who do you want to be speaking to? And how do you find the podcast they are listening to? And so that can be anywhere from gender, age, location to, a certain demographic. Like, I know someone who has been in our community. She has a podcast that is specifically for marketing for travel advisors. So it's a very specific podcast she has, right? Now, as guests, she could have a wide range of people coming on. Travel advisors, cruise lines. Like, it's because she isn't specific about the type of travel, but what she is specific about is marketing and helping travel advisors be better at marketing, right? So she has a wide range of guests that could be coming on, but that's her goal and that's who she's speaking to. So obviously, if what you do has nothing to do with travel or travel advisors, would that be the right podcast for you? No. So it's really thinking about who is listening, who is the podcast for, who is listening, and are those people you want to talk to. And sometimes it can be as simple as gender. For me, I mainly speak to women and work with women. Yes, I have had male clients. We have a male member in our community right now, but I don't push speaking to them because I work better with women. What I do is specifically helping more women get their voice out and get into podcasting. So when I look at a podcast, it could be about podcasting. It could be a top podcast. Male hosted. I scan the episodes. Okay, most of these are male guests, which says to me, male hosted, mainly male guests. Who are they talking to? Probably more men than women. So for me, it could be a great big podcast, but that's not my target. So I'm not going to even apply because I may only get a few women in that one versus a podcast specifically directed towards women in podcasting. Does that make sense? Okay, so how to find them. The number one tool I tell everyone to use is called Listen Notes. ListenNotes.com is a podcast directory search engine. So that's all it is. It's basically a directory of all podcasts. And you can search it in many ways. You can search by topic, by niche, by audience, by keyword. You can even search by someone's name. Like if someone said, I was on this great podcast, you should listen to it, you might be a good fit, but they didn't tell you the name of it. What can you do? You can search their name. Like I can go into Listen Notes and search my name And not only do my podcasts show up, but all the podcasts I've guested on show up. So it gives you the ability to search in a lot of different ways. But it's also great for intentional pitching, like targeting, because you can really drill down on things that you can't when you're searching in like Apple or Spotify, because you're only going to see certain information in the apps, whereas Listen Notes is going to give you some other things. So I will show you some examples. So this is what Listen Notes looks like. This is the search bar up here. And this is some old screenshots from my pet podcast, so you can see what it looks like. So this is the top of what every podcast is going to look like. It's going to give you the name, the host, an image, and sometimes they have to be ranking for these numbers to appear. You're going to see these two numbers. Oops, didn't mean to click. And this is the one that is most of interest, global rank. So when you look at this and it says top something, so this is top 5%, that means top 5% of all podcasts. This isn't by category, this isn't by keyword, this is just all the active podcasts. And so what does this mean? The smaller this number is, the bigger the podcast is. So if you see top 2%, top 1%, those are bigger and bigger and bigger podcasts. And this is based on several things, including how long the podcast has been out, how consistently they're putting out content, and how many people are listening. So it's accumulation. And so what I want to say is this is, for me, it was more about consistency and over time, because my podcast is not huge. It hasn't even hit 10,000 downloads total yet, and it's been out 4.5 years, and it's a top 5%. So what is it? It's been out that long, and it's still going. People still listen even when there aren't new episodes. So I just like to kind of explain that, because it's just think about it in terms of this typically means it's been out longer, more consistent, has more episodes. The other reason I like Listen Notes is for this block over here. So this at the top will tell you what the categories it is. So on all apps, we all have to choose which categories we go into. The reason I'm in kids and family is because that's the only category that has a subcategory for pets and animals. So that's why those are chosen for this. It shows you how often it's updated, how long are episodes, do they have guests, where is it, how many episodes, how long has it been going. So all this data right here, you're not going to see that if you're in Apple or Spotify. You're just going to be able to see what are the new episodes, what's the general info. So I like Listen Notes because it's giving you data you can't see anywhere else. Now, does a new podcast mean you shouldn't be on it? Not necessarily. Just realize new podcasts are going to have less listeners, less downloads. There's no reason not to say yes unless you're just like, hey, I want to see you be out a little while and see how the quality of your podcast before I say yes. But obviously it's better as a guest when you don't know them that you see they've been podcasting and they've been out a while and the podcast has been out and has a good amount of episodes. Okay. And again, it's great to search in Apple, Spotify, wherever you listen, because it's going to search differently, because those apps are all set up with an algorithm based on popularity, based on the categories they're in. So you can still search there, but what I would suggest is find podcasts you think might be a good fit if you want to search wherever you listen normally, and then look them up. Google them, put them in Listen Notes, and get the additional data. So it is great to search in there, especially if that's where you listen, because you're already listening to certain ones, so you might get recommendations that you wouldn't see in other search engines. YouTube. So there is some debate. YouTube likes to call itself the #1 podcast platform. But, they count everyone. They count everyone with a YouTube channel as a podcast, and not everyone with a YouTube channel has a podcast. So there's labels. Some people use them differently. Some people, when you say podcast, they mean traditional podcast, audio only. Some people mean whatever kind of podcast it is, video, audio, live stream. So just realize some people have different meanings for those words, but a lot of podcasters are on YouTube. Some of us just put the audio on YouTube. Some of us do full episodes and video on YouTube. Some people live stream directly to YouTube. So again, if you're pitching, it's good to look up and see, do they have a YouTube channel? How active is it? How many subscribers do they have? It's just another place for information. But also think about YouTube differently. Most people go to YouTube to search for how to do something, right? That's what YouTube is, how-tos. Okay, why is this not working in my Descript? How do I fix this? And I go to YouTube to find a video. So just realize searching on YouTube is going to be a little different than searching in Apple or even searching on Listen Notes. But it is good to look and see if a podcast you're interested in does have a channel, and are they putting out video episodes? Do they ever live stream? It's a good place to learn more about the podcast, or even to just search for some in your niche or topic. There are some people who only do it on YouTube. So I say that to say, don't miss out on potential of being on a video podcast that isn't necessarily being put on the audio apps. And with live streaming, you can now, depending on what platform you use, you can live stream to YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Substack. Like, you can be live streaming in many places at once. And sometimes that's it. They live stream, it's out, that's all there is. Sometimes they live stream and then they take it and they edit it and put it onto the audio apps also. So it's also good to know how many platforms they are posting to. The more the better, I say. Another way to find podcasts is through guest matching services. So I don't push this on people when you're just starting, because I don't think it's necessary. You can find enough on your own. But if you get to the point where you just don't have the time to search and you want to be consistently guesting and you want a tool that's going to help you do it more easily, that's when I suggest trying out one of these. I personally use Podmatch. I've been using Podmatch for years. I use it both as a host and as a guest, and it is a great tool. I have found many opportunities via Podmatch that I probably wouldn't have found otherwise, because Podmatch has a level of authority to it. So when you're matched on Podmatch, you're like, okay, this is a quality podcast. Like, I can trust that. I can see all this information about it. And again, inside these platforms, you're going to get more information than you're going to be able to see outside of it, because hosts have to fill out a very detailed profile to be on there. And I also like Podmatch because they have a lot of education. It's very user friendly, but it's also cost effective. I believe it's $30 or $35 a month right now for guests, versus Podpitch, for example, that I think is $200 a month. And Matchmaker, I think, is in the same arena as Podmatch. Personally, I don't like Matchmaker. I tested it out. I did not find great matches. I found mostly pay to play, people reaching out to say, hey, pay this and be on our podcast. It's like, I'm not paying to be on a platform to then pay to be on podcasts, right? So for me, it wasn't the right experience. Some people have had better experience with it than I did. So, I always say that to let you know, this is my experience. Podmatch is used by tens of thousands of hosts and guests, so you have a big pool to tap into. But the one thing I say about any of these services is, just because you're matched with someone doesn't mean you have to be on the podcast. This is just like dating. You get to swipe left or right. Just because you're matched doesn't mean as a host you have to say yes to the guest. As a guest, you have to say yes to the podcast. So I always like to say that, because I have had clients say, well, I feel bad saying no. It doesn't matter. They're not going to see it. You want to teach that platform the right podcast you want, and the only way you can do it is by telling it what you don't want. So just a good aside there. And lastly is how to find podcast networking. Networking is definitely a way I have found podcasts. It's a great way to build connections, get to know someone, so you kind of get ahead of the line. You're not just a cold reach out, or you've gone to their website and filled out a guest form and they don't know you. Sometimes it's the introduction. It's the, oh, I saw you on this Zoom and I really love your podcast. I'd love to be considered to be a guest. So there's lots of organizations and networking groups that are specific to podcasting. Things like Podfest. Podfest is they have an annual national in-person conference every January, but they also host monthly get-togethers. And so that's a great way to meet other hosts, potentially pitch yourself. There are lots of other groups like New Englanders Podcast Community, Feminist Podcast Collective. I will also share at the end my women's podcaster party. And one of the reasons I created that was creating a space for women to network, to find connections, to be on podcasts, to find new guests. And so I always say networking is a great one. And if you're in some groups where they let you have an ask, sometimes would say, what's your ask this month? You can simply say, I'm looking for podcasts to guest on. These are the kind of podcasts I'd love to be on. If you know someone who has one, please, connect me. So just say it. Just say what you're looking for, because trust me, in podcasting, I love connecting people. I love helping people find other podcasts to be on, because it doesn't affect me any. It's just me helping my connections grow and find new guests. Okay, so before we get into preparing, any questions about searching or finding the right podcast? Okay, all right. Quiet group. Okay, so how to prepare to be a guest. First of all, this is the thing you want to think about. And this kind of goes into both what Reese asked and Super Kate, where you asked, how do you prove your worthiness as a guest if your following isn't as big as theirs? Veronica asked, what is the podcast matchmaking? So no, they're not apps, they're software. Podmatch, you log in to a dashboard, and every day they give you a new set of matches to review and decide if you want to pitch yourself to them. So it's online. It is web-based, but it's not specifically an app. It's just a dashboard that you log into. I'm kind of surprised they haven't created an app for it at this point, but I think part of the problem is there's so many people on it. It would be so much to have, memory for an app, that they haven't gone that way. Okay, so what do we want to think about in terms of pitching yourself? The first thing I always say is, what makes you unique as a guest? How are you different than any other person that talks about the same thing that you talk about? So for me, there are a lot of people whose business is helping people start podcasts, grow podcasts, all of that, right? So there's a lot of competition in the space of podcast coaching. So for me, what is my value proposition? What I specifically do is I help women entrepreneurs who are solopreneurs. They have no team, or they have maybe one person helping them. So when I teach them how to podcast, I teach them how to do it all themselves, so that they can keep the podcast going themselves. And that's different than a lot of people. A lot of people help people launch what they do to the production, they do the editing, they do finding the guests. But for me, I mainly work with people who want to be shown how to do it so that they can manage it and keep it going themselves. Now, sometimes I help them manage it, sometimes I help them with editing. But how I'm different as a coach is I'm speaking to women who are looking to do a podcast, but want to have the means of being able to produce it and keep it going with themselves and their team. So I can speak to a different clientele than some of the other people. I'm not looking for big, $5,000-$10,000 clients. That's for production companies and things like that. I'm talking about individual entrepreneurs that have a story, that want to create a podcast so that they can, have ownership over the content they're creating. I also talk about guesting. So sometimes I'm on a podcast to specifically talk about how to be a good guest, how to be strategic, because they have a lot of people talking about podcasts and growing them, but they don't have a lot of people talking about the guest side. And so this is important to think about when you're looking at a podcast. You think, oh, this podcast would be a good fit. Look at the last 5 episodes. What were the topics? What topic could you add that is of interest in the same way, but is different than their previous guests? And the reason I say look at the last 5-10 episodes, you don't want to waste your time pitching yourself on a specific topic that someone just talked about 3 episodes ago, right? Because the host is going to be like, well, we just had someone talk about that, so that's not really the right time. And so, for example, if I'm looking at a podcast and I'm seeing, okay, people are talking a lot about launching, how to launch, how to grow in that first month, like that's not what I want to talk about. I want to talk about 6 months out, or what happens after your first year of podcasting. How do you assess how you've done and make changes, right? So you want to look and see what people have been talking about. So like, how do you match that, but also not pitch something that they literally just did a whole episode about it. And what I always want you to lean into is, what value will you bring to that show and its listeners? What will listeners walk away with after listening to your interview? Because most hosts, that's what we want to know. We want to know, what is it you're bringing to the show that is different and that is going to be of value to me and my listeners. So, helping listeners do XYZ, that's a great way to pitch, versus I can talk about guesting and hosting and growing, like that's very generic. But if I came in and said, I can, give your listeners 5 steps to find the right podcast to guest on, that's a very different pitch than a generic, like, I just like to talk about guesting, right? So think about how you can bring value to the show, how you can bring value to the listeners, what is something you can give that the listeners can walk away with and actually take action on. And it's also good to have a cheat sheet. Like, I have a Google Doc that has like topics and questions and bios. Like, just have somewhere you put it all, and then you can just copy and paste out whenever you're filling out a guest form or pitching yourself. Let's see, we have a question. Nope. Okay. So these are all the things you should prepare ahead of time. And the reason I say this is because every podcast has a different process. That is the hard part with guesting. It takes time to apply or pitch yourself because we all use different processes. We all use different forms. Some hosts will have a link on their website that says apply to be a guest, or want to be a guest, learn more. And they have a short form or a long form for you to fill out. So if you have all of this information at the ready, you can pitch yourself or fill out a form at any given time. And I have mine, and then I update it whenever I change my bio or I add a new link. So it's good to just have it all in one space. And I have a Google Doc for guesting and a Google Doc for speaking because they are slightly different. So you want to write your bios a little bit differently. Part of that is, now some hosts will specifically say, give me a bio of 50 words or less that will be your introduction, right? Some hosts don't say that. They just ask for your bio and then they pull from your bio. So when you're guesting and you're filling out a guest form, just realize your bio could turn into something that they literally just read aloud. Not everybody does that, but some people will. So think about your bio as something you would want someone reading, and it's not just information for the host because they could potentially use it that way. Obviously, whoops, what happened? Sorry, for some reason it was saying my mic changed. That was weird. Okay, so obviously bios of different links, because some people ask for a very specific link, website links, social links, have a couple headshots ready. That what we were talking about before, what is your unique value? What can you help listeners with? Have a list. Have a list of different topics that you can speak to. Have questions they can ask you. Some hosts will say, are there any questions you want to make sure that I ask? Are there any questions that you would like me to ask? So it's always good to just have a cheat sheet ready, and then you can copy and paste out whatever they're asking for. Guest forms can be anything. They can be Google forms. They can be forms embedded in their website. So they're all going to be a little different. And also, if you do decide to use one of the paid platforms like Podmatch, you would be putting all of this into your profile. And so that, it's just helpful to kind of create this sheet for yourself and keep it and update it as you go. Another way you can do that is simply by creating a one sheet. This is an older version of mine, but it is a podcast one sheet. So it talks about who I am, my podcast, the different communities I have. I talk about topics that I can speak to on podcasts. And I also have here some of the podcasts I've guested on. I'm working on updating this with the newest podcasts I've been on, and then having each name be a hyperlink to the episode. More than likely, it will hyperlink to the episode on my website because then I'm generating traffic to my website. But I do have a page on my website that is called Podcast Guesting, and it has my one sheet there where people can download it, and then I link all the episodes that I'm on, and I can show you guys that at the end if you want to see what that looks like. So it's always good to have something like this. You can even have it on your website, but it's kind of the same idea as this information. You're just putting it into a prettier package. And obviously, if you have a one sheet as a speaker, you want to have one specific to guesting because it is different. And you're going to pitch yourself slightly differently. Okay, so now let's talk about being a great guest. But before I do that, let's go back. Any questions about preparing and all of this? Okay. So how to be a great guest after your interview. So obviously, the first thing is you want to post about it wherever you hang out. Now, I will be very honest with you. Not all hosts are going to send you an email. And I don't know why, but, people fall through the cracks. I have had episodes come out as a guest that I was never told. I never got an email. I never got anything. I had to search it out. So when you are pitching yourself, when you are recording, you should have a spreadsheet. You should be keeping track of it. And then on a regular basis, let's say, go check and see if they're out. But, you just realize most hosts should send you a link and say your episode is out, but sometimes they don't. So it's good to keep track of all of the ones you've pitched yourself, you've been on, when you recorded. Make a note if they tell you when they think it might come out, because you will have to keep track of that part of it yourself. So just realize you got to pay attention. And then what do you do after the interview? So this can be a variety of things, and it may look different depending on who you are, what your business is, what you talk about. But in general, these are some of the ways that you can share it. You can send a dedicated email to your email list talking about your interview, talking about the podcast and why people should listen, and have links to it. Obviously, that's one of the easiest ways to promote it, right? Post it on social media. Again, good hosts are not only going to tell you and give you links to the episode, they may give you an image, they may give you video clips. Some people don't give you any of that, so what you could do is create your own image. I have done that. You can, just create an image that says, I was a guest on this podcast, come listen to the episode, right? So just realize you can create whatever you want to if they're not giving you content to use. But you always want to tag the host, the podcast, depending on how they show up on social media. Now, like on Instagram, you can even invite them to be a collaborator on a post, which is great. And that's something that I try to do when I post about episodes. I for sure tag my guests, but I often will also invite them to be a collaborator, because then that image, that reel, will show up on both of our profiles. And so that's a bigger reach than just on mine tagging somebody. Obviously, if you have access to clips or reels, you want to post those. You can post reels on, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. You can put shorts on YouTube. And sometimes if hosts have a YouTube channel and they're posting shorts, you can also post the shorts to your channel. You can link it to your channel. If you have a newsletter or whether it's on LinkedIn or Substack or both, you can have a dedicated article about that episode. There's lots of different ways to pull that information. But again, these are your words. You're being interviewed. You're talking about your business. So you can use that, what you said in that episode, to create this content that then links for people to go listen or watch the episode. Like I said, you can add the links to your website, and in a minute I will show you what mine looks like. And then, of course, you can also do an actual blog post on your website where not only are you linking to the episode, but you can link to your own events, your own content. And if you do blog posts, it's really great. You can also, if you are on Pinterest, you can create pins that link back to that blog post. All right. Questions about after the interview. One thing I will say is it's okay if you didn't see the email or post it as soon as the episode was out. Why? Because the episode's still going to be there a week later, a month later, right? So never feel like it's been too long. I have some guesting I've done earlier this year that I haven't specifically posted about yet. I can post about it whenever I want to, especially a week where I don't feel like creating new content. Find that episode, use the topic, what I talked about, and create a lot of these. So you're also creating content for yourself that is you, is your words. You're not going to chat and asking it to create something from nothing. You're using what already exists to create content from that. Okay, so one of the things I wanted to mention, I do have a new workshop series that starts tomorrow that is specifically showing you how to take your guest episode and create these pieces of content from it. Those of you that are in my community, this is already on the community calendar, so you guys will see all 3 parts on your calendar. If you are not a member, you can register to join just the workshop series, or you can join the community and get access to that and everything else. But I'm really going to be showing the process of how to get the content, how to find your guest episode, how to pull the content from it, and then figuring out which places are best for you, where you already are, or where may be good places for you to be able to be publishing about. Whether you're a host or a guest, you can use that content for the platforms that you're active on. Also, please come and join us in August on the 27th. That is our next podcaster party networking event. And that is free. You don't have to pay to be there. You don't have to be in the membership community. Anybody can join on that. And then I also want to mention, I do have a membership community that Miranda and Super Kate, I can't see who all else is here, and Reese are members of. And so this community is really just ongoing support and accountability for hosts and guests. So every month I offer a group coaching session, a monthly planning session. We do tech help sessions like how to set up a Podmatch profile, how to use Descript for editing. We did that last week. And I also do a pitch fest. Some of you have been before. A pitch fest is live on Zoom for an hour. Everybody gets 3 minutes to pitch themselves as a guest. And then after the event, I edit that clip and send it to you. So you can post it on your website, you can put it on social, whatever you want to do with it. And I will say a lot of people give me good feedback because it's not just about getting the clip, but they love hearing how everybody else pitches themselves because it gives them ideas of different ways of saying, the same thing about themselves. So I will share those links. I'm going to stop the share now. So, and if anyone has any questions, please unmute or drop it in the chat. I'm going to go pull up my website.
Julie, I just want to add, this is just always so helpful as a reminder of how to reach out to the right podcast. I've been a guest at a couple podcasts and I've submitted for speaking on a couple others. And I just really appreciate the outline that you give of what we need to research, as well as how to present one sheet that has that information. I mean, I have it for speaking, but it's a little different for podcasting. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So
And
yeah, go ahead.
no, I was going to say, I appreciate you saying that because, think about it when you're speaking, we're a little more tied to what our topics are or what we speak on, right? Whereas guesting, we get to kind of finagle that a little bit. We can be a little more broad, or we can put more options maybe than we would on a speaker one sheet because it's a
Yeah.
little bit different process. So I appreciate you saying that because it's similar but definitely different. And so you want to have a different, set of information for guesting versus speaking. And so I'm
Right.
I'm glad it was helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, I am going to have to add that to my press page that has information sheet, one sheet for podcasting, because that just already, by having that, says I am a podcast host guest and would like
Yep.
to do more. Yeah, so thank you.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
one of the things is especially if you're just starting as a guest, it's okay. We all have to start somewhere, right? So you can create that even if you've never guested before. But then as you guest, it's good to show the episodes you've guested on. So I will
yeah.
do a quick share so I can show you guys what my website looks like. So obviously this is my main page, but you'll notice up here I have a podcast page. So this page lists my podcasts and then it lists all of my client podcasts. Hello, Super Kate. There you are. So that way I am linking directly to my client's podcast as well as mine. And then I have a separate page for guesting. And so it starts off by saying, who am I? What do I like to talk about? Here's my guest one sheet. And then I list all the podcast episodes that I want. Now, I update this at least once a month. And I don't always get a specialized image. So I just pull whatever image they use for their podcast. And so I'm putting the name of the podcast, what the episode name was, and a link to either listen or watch, depending on. Like this one is an audio only podcast. She does not have a YouTube channel. So this directly goes to the audio. Some of them have both. So I decide which one to link it to. But, it's first of all, it's pretty. I have all these different pictures, but each one I'm putting in the SEO of the name of the podcast, the name of the host, the name of the episode I was on, as well as hyperlinking to theirs. So, first of all, this makes it really easy for me to say, man, I don't have content this week. What do I want to talk about? Let's pull this episode and post about it, right? So, it's also a way to give yourself your content in an organized place. Obviously, I have a lot because this is my business. So I do a lot of guesting because it's a part of what I do. Some of these are older, some of these are my own clients' podcasts. So, it's a wide variety, but it also shows, yeah, okay, she knows what she's doing as a guest. She's been guesting a long time, right? It's okay
Yeah.
if you're starting with one or two because we all have to start somewhere. Yes.
Do you
Well
recommend
done.
that you have a separate tab on your website just for podcasting, like you do for speaking?
It's up to you. I have a speaking page. And so again, it's about me as a
Yeah.
speaker. I have a separate speaker one
Hmm.
sheet. I talk about that and then I list places that I've spoken and then I have spoken in person, so I have a few images. So
Hmm.
I keep it separate because I do see it as two separate things, but you don't have to. You could have both of these on one.
Hmm.
Obviously, for me, my guesting, I have, like 40 episodes I've been on. So it would be hard for me to add that on the same page. So it's a little different, but I also help people with guesting. So it makes more sense for me to separate it out. So if you want to just have a media page and it talks about speaking, it talks about guesting, that's totally fine. Because I could have two links. I could have, this is my speaker sheet, this is my guest sheet, right?
Right.
You could just have them in the
Hmm.
same spot.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay, any other questions? You guys are very quiet. Why is this doing this? Well, I will be after this. I will send you an email with the recording. So if you want to rewatch anything, and then I'll also send you. Let's see. I think I have. Yes, here is the link to the system strategy workshop series that starts tomorrow. If I can spell it right. And that, and even if you can't make it tomorrow, for those it's a 3-part series. You will get the recordings for all of them after, so you don't have to worry about that. Let me grab, I will also grab the link for the podcaster party. We didn't have one in July. I tried to take a break, but the dates are up for August and September if you would like to join us. And I will also grab, in case you want to check out the upcoming Pitch Fest. We'll be doing that. Actually, that's next week. How did that happen so quickly? It was thinking like, oh, I take a month off, then all of a sudden we're already there. So again, the Pitch Fest, you can attend that even as a non-member, and then you get the clip after the fact. Anybody have any other questions?
Well, I'll
Yeah,
just go
Super
ahead.
Kate.
So I have I decided to launch a series this week on my podcast, and I just received an email saying that one of the episodes that I guested on like 2 months ago is now live. So would you suggest I just write them and say, hey, I am absolutely wanting to promote this. I'm going to do it next week once I'm through with this launch of mine, or post about it, but then like do a harder push for it next week?
I mean, that's up to you. If you're in the
Mm-hmm.
middle of launching something, there's no reason to change your schedule just because your episode happened to come out. And it's also up to you if you let them know that. I mean, I will be honest, I rarely hear from people that say, I'm going to post about it tomorrow or next week. Because the idea is, as long as you post about it's going to get more, visibility. So
Okay.
obviously, a host would want you to post now, but if you didn't know it was coming out now, you can't change your own marketing plan. So don't feel bad about that. And it's up to you if you want to respond and say, thanks so much. I'll be posting this as soon as I'm done posting my new, series. Yeah, just make it
Okay.
very
That's
light. And so you've still said it, but you're still posting it.
Yeah. Okay. That was the wording I was looking for. All right. Thank
Yeah.
you.
And here's the thing, if you can add it to your website, you can add the link on your YouTube channel, you can do all that now. You're just not going to post about it because you don't want to interrupt the marketing you already have going on.
Yeah. All right.
And
Cool.
and that is something I don't think I mentioned. It is also great if you have a YouTube channel and you're guesting, is to create a playlist of all of your guest episodes. And I will show you what that looks like really quick. Because again, it's a way of organizing it for yourself. But by putting it as a playlist on your channel, you're also helping to promote it in a way that's going to get them more visibility than it just being promoted on their own channel. So I will show you my YouTube channel and what that looks like. So this is my playlist tab. And you'll notice I have a bunch of playlists. I have one for each podcast, but I also have one that just simply says Julie Podcast Guest Episodes. So when you view this full playlist, you'll see lots of different images, some of which are the same that are on my website, some are different. So anytime I'm on an episode of a podcast that has a YouTube version, I simply click this add button, and then it just asks you, why is it doing that? That's new. Something must have updated. And all you have to do is put the URL of your episode right here. You just paste it here and it'll add it. So you're not pulling it from their channel, you're just adding the link to that episode on their channel to a playlist on your YouTube. So then all of these guys are visible on my channel. But when someone clicks on one of these, like this one, then they're actually watching it on Tanya's channel, so she gets the views from it, even though they found it on my channel. So I always like to show that because that is a great way to organize your video episodes, have them all in one place, but it's also a great way to help promote an episode by adding it to your channel as well. Okay. Well, if there are any more questions, we were just up on time. As I said, I will send out an email later today with the recording and all the links I shared. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out and ask me. I'm happy to help. Or if you want to meet one-on-one and talk about, specifically about what you're looking for with guesting, I'm happy to help with that as well.
This was really great. Thank you. Very helpful.
Great, Liz. Thank you. So glad you were able to come. Well, thank you, Super Kate. Thank you, Liz. Thank you, others that I know are behind their images. I appreciate you all being here, and I hope to see you again soon. Bye, everybody.